All right, welcome to episode 6. And today's podcast is going to be a very popular subject: why smart people make stupid decisions. And I'm not just talking about people in prison, I'm talking about people who fail businesses, who fail their careers, who fail school, and essentially fail their lives because they make stupid decisions. So let's get into why people make stupid decisions. We've seen it all. A CEO destroying a company, a politician ruining their career, a doctor making a terrible life decision, an investor losing millions of dollars. And hear everyone asking the same question: how could someone so smart do something so stupid? So, smart people fail every day, and failure is part of success. You cannot have an inside without an outside. You cannot have a top without a bottom. You cannot have black without white. And you cannot have success without failure. So the first mistake in my career that I've personally seen people make is assuming and confusing knowledge and wisdom. So they assume that knowledge equals wisdom and that wisdom equals knowledge. And in their minds, they associate those terms synonymously. When in reality, in actuality, wisdom is derived from knowledge. Knowledge does not automatically imbue wisdom onto you. Even though you have success, even though you have money, even though you may have power, doesn't mean that you are wise enough to use those positions in a good way. And that is why many people fail, because they're assuming that knowledge and wisdom are the same thing. So let's discuss for a second the difference between, for example, IQ and judgment. So experience versus decision making, knowing facts versus applying facts. So let's get into that. Because you have an IQ that's high or because you have an IQ that's low doesn't necessarily affect your judgment in a correlating manner. So in other words, high IQ doesn't necessarily equate to high level decision making. And just because you may have a lower than average IQ also doesn't automatically equate and correlate the other way, meaning that you have a lower threshold to make good decisions. So you have to be able to apply the facts against your experience, and that is what fuels and drives. That's the engine behind your decision-making processes. Whether you consciously think that or not, that is what is subconsciously going on in the background, in this decision-making engine we all have. Now, we only have so much control over it because through meditation and studying Buddhism and Alan Watts and Thich Nhat Hanh, I have learned firsthand through my experiences, I have seen the monkey mind. And monkey mind is a very it's a very rooted concept in Buddhist beliefs. And basically what monkey mind is your mind is essentially designed to swing from branch to branch, just like a monkey does when they move, kind of without thinking about it. And that's what our mind does. It moves from one thing, one idea, one topic to another with seemingly no transitions. It just goes from one to another to another to another. And something that people don't understand unless they've experienced it themselves, not just through studying something like Buddhism or meditation, but actually doing it and putting that into practice on a daily basis. Well, guess what? You think, for example, with anxiety, so let's say you have to make a big decision, you're anxious about it, and you may feel like you're thinking about the same thing twice, or 3 times, or 4 times, or over and over again. But in reality, in actuality, you are not thinking the same thought twice. Every thought you experience in your mind is like a snowflake. No two are the same. You are literally manifesting that same thought over again. It is not the same thought. It is a remanifestation of a previous thought, but it is a new thought. So anxiety, you get stuck in this loop of I have to make this big decision, I have to make this big decision, and you keep going over the same thing in your mind. Well, really, it's not the same thing. Your mind is rethinking it. Your perception of it is wrong. It is not the same thing being thought of again. It is a different thing, even if your mind says, well, no, that's the same exact idea. 2 plus 2 is 4. I'm thinking about it again. You're missing the point. The point is the thought is new. The basis may not be, but the thought is. And that is what fuels these anxiety loops until you can zoom out and watch the monkey and see that you're it and that you don't have full control over your thoughts. And that's a common misconception about meditation is people think that meditation is stopping thoughts when actually it's completely the opposite. So when we talk about knowing facts and applying facts to business and decision making, you have to realize that. So there's this trap of being smart. And this is where things can get dangerous because sometimes intelligence can actually make problems worse. So I say this without ego at all because I've lost it years ago. And sometimes knowing too much is not good. And sometimes knowing too much about a lot of things makes you really have to think and question and step back and ask yourself, wait a minute, what am I really doing here? How should I apply this knowledge? Or should I even apply it at all, given a particular circumstance or decision that you have to make? So there's this concept of rationalization, confirmation bias, ego investment, and basically just defending poor decisions. So, for example, rationalization. Well, he did it. She did it. It worked for him, it worked for her, or they got away with it, or they're doing it. Listen, just because someone else is doing something or has done something does not mean it's going to work for you. So we have a lot of these gurus out there right now, self-proclaimed, some self-made, some successful in their own right. And they're touting all of their successes on social media. So I can think of plenty off the top of my head. I don't need to name them. I'll just give you the scenarios. So some guy creates a startup company in big tech 20 years ago. He's at the right place, right time with the right people. He's not some guru. He just knew what he knew in the field, and he applied the knowledge, and he was around the right people at the right time, used the right networking, yes, created their own luck in a way, ended up selling the company for hundreds of millions, and now wants to say, well, look at me. I did it. You can do it. Well, that's half bullshit. And that's why I'm not this guru guy, because I'm not going to tell you that you can make it big, because not everybody can and not everybody will. And with social media today, the playbook has really flipped, and it is not fair. It's almost as if you can't play by the rules anymore, because the traditional bootstrap technique doesn't work anymore. Because the more you work, the longer hours you work, especially if you're doing it for someone else, you'll never become rich. And I don't mean millions, billions of dollars. Just well off to not have to worry about money, to not have to think about money, to get to the point where you don't have to constantly check your bank account balance. And to me, that's real financial freedom, is when you can make purchases, even larger purchases, and you do not have to check your balance. So back to this confirmation bias. That type of thinking in today's social media makes you think, well, if they did it, I can do it. Or I can do it better. And listen, maybe you can. Maybe you can. But that doesn't equal success nowadays. For example, a viral video. Okay? The same exact video could be posted at a different time by a different person. And the one that went viral and got 10 million views in 2 days, in 48 hours, that same exact video posted by someone else at a different time gets 20 views. And you might ask yourself, well, how does that happen? Well, if you really break it down and look at it, it's because someone with influence on social media, so someone with power, and power is perceived as the amount of followers you have, essentially, the amount of likes you have, and your audience engagement on social media. So it doesn't matter what they do. But someone along the lines, so your friend or a friend of a friend of a friend, picked it up, reshared it, and someone with that power on social media reshared it, and it's compounding. And that's how it goes viral. But it's almost like there's a fork in the road. And you don't know which way that's going to go, but 99% of the time the fork goes, it's not going to get viral. But other times it does. So TikTok has definitely changed its algorithm over the past couple of years. And right now it's changing. Subscribers are more hard to come by and likes are cheap. So that's why you see tons of accounts on TikTok now, for example, with 1,000 followers and 2 or 3 million likes. You did not see that disparity years ago. And even a guy like Gary Vee, he will tell you that your subscribers really don't matter at this point. Now, for a business like mine, that's not entirely true. But for content creators like these teenagers or these early 20-something just trying to create stupid content that people will watch, that's different. But it's really changed. So some other real-world examples is in investigation cases that I've been involved with too. So I was a PI for years, worked some big high-level cases. And, one of the cases I worked was the Caitlin Akins case. And I'm very intimately familiar with that case. And honestly, I got some backlash on that when I was interviewed by Chris Hansen on Crime Watch Daily, because I didn't share the view that the public did. Now, everybody for that particular case pointed the finger at the ex-stepfather, and I was more zoomed out. I was like, listen, I'm not even really sure she was dropped off there that day, because the only other person we have to confirm that is the mother. And Caitlin's gone, and the ex-stepfather, James, he's not talking. So who's to say she was there? Oh, because the phone pinged there in that location. And, James sent the text message to confirm. Lisa said that she was there. And then the luggage found in the ditch. So see, when I investigate a case, I don't just take all this as fact. I take it with a grain of salt and I investigate it. How they found the luggage in the drainage ditch, for example. I was never able to independently confirm that. So to be honest with you, I never really took something like that to heart. But what I did was when I had Lisa, for example, in front of me, sharing things with me and showing me screenshots and invoices and talking about this and that, that's really what I was analyzing because it's coming right from the source, right? And to this day, I still have a different opinion on what happened than 99% of the public. But you know what? With that particular case, I'm going to tell you right now, I probably know more about that case. I'm more intimate with that case than almost anyone else, except James himself, Lisa herself, or Caitlin herself. And again, I have a completely different opinion on that because I don't fall into this rationalization and this confirmation bias. Because if I did, I would just say, yep, James did it. And that's what everyone says, but did what? Did what, for example? What did he do exactly? Now, she's presumed dead, right? But where's the body? You know, he made some curious statements to the detective, too. But they also took 3 weeks to get a search warrant. So, you know, he makes a statement like, wow, I'm surprised you didn't come sooner. I know that when she left here, she was alive. What do you think? I'd be stupid enough to bury her on my own property? Those are very stupid, curious statements. But they don't prove culpability. And now, 20 years later, the little sister, who's not so little now, who I also interviewed, wants to come out of the woodwork and say, well, he sexually abused me and Caitlin. Well, the truth about that is, Lisa knew about something that was going on and never reported it. We have multiple recorded interviews with multiple investigators where Lisa tells us, yeah, I saw James and he was naked and he was masturbating on the computer and she never reported it, never did anything about it. Now, whether that in and of itself constitutes a crime is aside from the fact that Lisa never took any action. And that's aside from the fact now 20 years later, it surfaces as, I believe, 8 felony charges against James. And now he's scheduled for a jury trial in July. And of course he'll be convicted because that's all the jury needs to hear. It's not going to be a fair trial. But everybody looks at this and says, oh, well, he did it. He's guilty. But again, I don't get mixed up in that bias because that's what it is. So it's really stupid. It's really stupid because I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to mention the names, but there are definitely 2 other people that should be looked at as suspects. And when I say suspect, I'm not even really sure suspect in what. Because again, we don't even know what happened to Caitlin. But there's 2 people that they really should be focusing on. And for some reason, nobody did. And we interviewed them. But law enforcement didn't seem to care. So we'll see how that plays out. But you can't be sucked up into this bias because there's a lot of misinformation out there. So when someone tells me, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, you know what? That's fine. But the truth is, I know way more about the case than you do. And I am the one who has sat face to face with the mother, with James's mother as well. In fact, I don't even think law enforcement did that. But I was the one who sat with her at her house for over 3 hours and discussed the case with her back in 2016, I believe. Did you do that? No, I didn't think so. So before, again, you form your own bias, just take my advice. You know this much about the case. I have a much clearer, bigger picture than you do. So before you go make a decision that's biased, zoom out. So there's some practical lessons here, all right? So of course, there's criticism about my view on that case and what happened. And at this point, I still don't really know what happened, and I don't want to make this podcast about that. That was just one real world example that I can give you of this rationalization and confirmation bias that a lot of other people run into, right? So I seek criticism. And I also believe from training thousands of people that all criticism is essentially a form of negativity. Now, I don't perceive it like that. You know, I have an ENTJ personality, so I absorb it very well, and I can come off as a bit harsh and abrasive, but I want that criticism because I literally want to better myself. And I don't say that with ego, but I want to be better. So I challenge these assumptions, and I slow major decisions, and I separate ego from ideas. And that's what you need to do in your life because, remember, your intellect, whether you have higher than normal intellect or lower than normal or your average, it doesn't matter because if you understand the applications of things, it changes the whole trajectory of your life decisions. And that is the problem a lot of people have. They have this tunnel vision. They only see what they want to see, or they only see what's in this moment right now. And that's no different than the hunter who shoots his toe off with the shotgun because he has his foot up on the ledge of the tree stand, has his shotgun propped, goes to shoot the deer or whatever he's hunting, and ends up blowing his toe off. You wonder, how the hell can that happen? Because they're not looking at what's right in front of them. And that is something that a lot of people do nowadays. They want to look so into the future. They want to plan for this and they want to plan for that, but they don't see what's right in front of them. Okay? And I think if the fog was wiped in the Caitlin Akins case, I think it's pretty damn obvious who's responsible, at least culpable in some way for whatever did happen. And one of the big reasons I think that is because although I've learned over the years, humans sometimes just do shit to do shit. 99% of the time, though, there's a reason. And when we talk motive, there's a couple other people that had motive to silence her. And it's out there in the public why they would have wanted to do that. And that's why James never really fit for me. Because, like, if he did kill her or he did rape her, why? Why do it when you had all this opportunity for 20 years and you never did it? So this is, again, why I do seek criticism. Because if you want to tell me that I'm wrong, or you have other information, or you think something different, then back it up. Just don't say, oh, it's obvious. He did it. Well, first of all, what did he do? And why do you think that? Because he was the last person to see her alive? Who says who? Says who? Says you? Because my investigation never could determine who the last person was to see her. Never could determine that. So the goal here isn't to become the smartest person in the room. The goal is to become the person most willing to question whether they're wrong. And for that to happen, you need to be able to swallow your pride. And it's a learned thing. And sometimes it's hard to learn, but I've learned how to do it. And you need to learn how to do that too. And stop confusing intelligence with competence and intelligence with wisdom and experience with wisdom. You need to maintain the separation. And that is part of the key to success.